Welcome to Topic 0, Lesson 4 Notes, Adding, Subtracting, and Simplifying Fractions. We're going to start off with just learning how to simplify a fraction. To do that, we have to find the greatest common factor of the numerator and the denominator. Remember, your numerator is your top number, denominator is your bottom number. Once we know what the GCF, that greatest common factor, we divide the numerator and denominator by that GCF to get our simplified fractions. So, factors. Factors are the two numbers that you multiply, together to get a new number. So for example, the factors of 6, I know that 1 times 6 equals 6. So I have to stop and then think, does anything else multiply to give me 6? Well, I also know that 2 times 3 equals 6. If I keep thinking here, there's nothing else that multiplies together to give me 6. A lot of people think that 6 times 1 would count, but since those are the exact same numbers, we do not use those as a factor pair. You only have to list them one time. So this means that the number 6 has 4 unique factors, 4 different factors. Okay, so to simplify a fraction, we have to find all of the factors of both numbers, both the numerator and the denominator. So we're going to start off here, and I'm going to find all the factors of 20. So I always start off with 1 times that number, because every pair will have that. And then I just work my way up. So 1 times 20. Next I ask, does 2 times anything? Well, I know 2 times 10 equals 20. I keep going. 3. Does 3 times anything equal 20? No, it doesn't. So I move on to the next one. I've got 4. I know 4 times 5 equals 20. And then once you see that you've made it to the next number already, or if you ever run into a situation where a number multiplies by itself, you know that you are done with your list. So the factors of 20 are 1, 20, 2, 10, 4, and 5. Now I go through and I ask myself, what are the factors of 24? Again, I start with 1 times itself, so 1 times 24. 2, let's see, 24 is even, so I know 2 times 12 is 24. 3, I know 3 times 8 is 24. 4 goes into 4 times 6. And then I go to the next number, I see 5. I know 5 does not go into 24. And then I'm back to 6 here, and once I've hit that number that I've used, I can go ahead and stop. I've used up all my numbers. Now to find my greatest common factor, I need to look in both lists, and I'm going to circle all of the numbers that are in both lists. Now the only one we don't circle is 1, because we never simplify by using a 1, because you would never finish. Okay, so I go through, I look at 20. Is there a 20 down in the factors of 24? There's not, so it's not that one. I see a 2 in the top list, and I see a 2 in the bottom list. So those are common factors, those are in both. And we're going to check to see if that's the greatest one, the biggest one, or if it's just a common one. I see 10, there's no 10 in the bottom list. I see a 4 in both lists, so there's another common factor. And then I see a 5. So no 5 in both lists. So I only have 2 common factors here that we're going to look at, and I need the greatest of both of them. Remember, greatest means your biggest, so our greatest common factor here is 4. Once I know what that greatest common factor is, I can now simplify. I take my fraction and write it just like it is, 20 over 24, and I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by that greatest common factor, that 4, to get my new simplified fraction. So 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 24 divided by 4 is 6. If you write out your factor pairs like I did above, knowing what the division equals, you can always look at that factor pair to see what was it paired with in order to get that number. All right, so once we get down to 5, 6 here, we are at our simplified answer. And now we can try the next one. So 35 and 49, same process we're going to go through here. I'm going to list out all my factor pairs. So first I start off with 1 times 35. And then I ask myself, 2 times anything. 35 is odd, so I know 2 doesn't. 3 doesn't. 4 doesn't. Now it has 5 in the end of it, so I know 5 times 7 is going to be 35. I check 6 nothing times 6 equals 35, and then I'm right back here at this 7, so I know that I can stop. Looking at 49, same process. I start off with 1 times 49. And then I ask myself, 2 doesn't, 3 doesn't, 4 doesn't, 5 doesn't, 6 will get you to 48, so not quite there, but I know that 7 times 7. So here's one of those situations where we see that the number repeats itself, and that means that we are all done. There's not going to be any more pairs for that. Now, out of these two lists, I go through and look at it. Remember, we don't use 1. And then the only other common factor they have is 7. So that means that 7 has to be my greatest common factor here. So again, I look at my fraction, 35 over 49. I'm going to divide that numerator, and I'm going to divide the denominator by that greatest common factor, that's 7, to get my simplified fraction here. 35 divided by 7. I look at my pair up here, I know that that's going to be 5. And then on the bottom, 49 divided by 7. Again, I can look at that pair and see that that's going to be 7. Now, go ahead and pause this video, attempt the next 2 problems on your own, list out the pairs, find the greatest common factor, and then simplify it. Then unpause the video and see if your work matches mine. Right, now we're going to focus on adding fractions. The first thing we need to do when adding fractions is find a common denominator. So to do that, we want to find that least common multiple of our denominators, our bottom numbers. And to do that, first we need to know that multiples are the numbers you get when you multiply a certain number by an integer. Examples of a multiple, so multiples of 4. Those are our counting numbers. So that would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. We could just keep going up by 4s. Those are our multiples of 4. So down here, when looking at this addition problem, I've got 1/6 plus 3/4. When using that least common multiple method, the LCM, I'm going to list out some multiples of 6, and I'm going to list out some multiples of 4, and I'm going to keep doing it until I find a common one in both lists. So I always start out, I just list out a few of the first ones, so multiples of 6. So I'd go 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. I go out like 5 places to see. If you recognize one right away that's going to be in both lists, then you can stop. But if you're not sure, you just list out a few, and then you go try the other one. See if you find any that are in common. So 4, 8, 12. I see that I've got a 12 in both lists already. So I know that 12 is going to be my least common multiple. It's that first multiple we come across. Okay, once I know that, what I'm doing is my new denominator is going to be 12. That's the common denominator that I'm looking at. So the bottoms of my fractions are going to be 12. I have to ask myself, with each fraction, how did I get there? So how did I get from 6 to 12 in my first fraction? Well, I know that 6 times 2 equals 12. And to keep a fraction balanced, anything I multiply on the numerator or the denominator, I know I have to multiply the other by the same number. So I'm going to take my numerator times 2 as well. 2 times 1 I know is 2. Same process for the second fraction. I ask myself, how did I get from the denominator of 4 to a 12? So 4 times, I know 3. 4 times 3 is 12. And again, to keep balanced, I have to multiply the numerator by the same number. So my new numerator is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. Once I'm here, I'm going to add my numerators together. So I'm going to add straight across the top. I know 9 plus 2 is 11. So my numerator is going to be 11. And then my denominator, I just bring that denominator over. I do not add them together. It just comes straight over into my answer. Now, once we're here, I have to ask myself, can I simplify it? So I look at 11. I think about, what are the numbers that go into it? I think about those factors, those factor pairs. I know 1 times 11 and nothing else. So what I can do here, something I do to help myself, is I know we don't use 1 to simplify. And then I ask myself, does 11 go into 12? I know that it does not. So this one would be in simplest form. Now, another method you can use to add fractions together is by using what's called the butterfly method. In the butterfly method, what we do is we cross multiply. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to multiply 6 times 3. And I know that that equals 18. I'm going to write that down up top so I don't forget it. And then I cross multiply my other direction. So 1 times 4. Again, I'm going to write up top. 4 times 1 is 4. And then I have to multiply my bottoms, my denominators. So 6 times 4 here would give me a new denominator of 24. Now what this looks like is that I've got 4 24ths plus 18 24ths. I've got that common denominator on the bottom, which means I can now add straight across the top 4 plus 18, which will give me 22. So my numerator is now 22 over, and I bring that denominator over, 24. Now again, last thing I need to do is simplify. So I ask myself, what are the factor pairs for 22? Well, I know 1 times 22. It's even, so I know 2 times 11 in this case equals 22. And then I keep asking myself, nothing times 3 does, nothing times 4 does, nothing times 5 does, nothing times 6, nothing times 7, nothing times 8, nothing times 9, nothing times 10, and then I'm back to that 11, so I know I'm done. Now again, kind of what I was talking about a minute ago, I look through this. We don't use 1. I know that 22 does not go into 24. 2 does, so that one works. And 11 does not. So I know I'm going to be able to divide both of these numbers by 2 to finally simplify my answer. So I would take 22 over 24, and I'm going to divide my numerator and divide my denominator by 2 to get my new fraction. 22 divided by 2 is 11, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. Notice how we get that same answer as we did on the last problem. Now, pause this video and try out the next problem on your own. Use both methods, and then check back with the video and see how you did. Right, and finally subtracting fractions. This is going to be the exact same process as adding fractions. However, instead of adding the numerators together, we will subtract those numerators. So we start off by listing out the multiples of 6. So again, I just list out a few of them, 6, 12, 18, 24, and then I start listing out some of those multiples of 4. So 4, 8, 12. I see a 12 in both lists here, so I know that that is going to be my least common multiple for our two fractions here. So this means my new denominator of this subtraction problem is going to be 12. The next thing I need to do is think about how did I get from my original fraction to this 12. So I look at 6. 6 times 2 equals 12. And again, whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator as well. So I need to multiply 5 by 2. 5 times 2 is 10, so I can write that down. Now I follow the same process again for the next fraction. 4 times what is 12? I know it's going to be times 3. So I multiply my numerator times 3. 1 times 3 equals 3. And now I can subtract. So what I do is I subtract right across the top. 10 minus 3, which is going to equal 7. So my new numerator is 7. And then remember that denominator moves over to our answer. It stays the same. And lastly, I just need to check, can it be simplified? So I ask, what are the factors of 7? So I take 1 times 7. And that's all there is. 7's a prime number. Neither of those numbers go into 12, which means that 7/12 is my final answer. All right, now using the butterfly method, again, the exact same way that we did on adding, I'm going to cross multiply my 4 and my 5 here. 4 times 5 is 20. I cross multiply the other direction. 6 times 1. 6 times 1 is 6. And then I multiply my denominator. 6 times 4, which is 24. On the left side here, we see that our new fraction is 20 over 24. And then, again, this is subtraction, and our right fraction will be 6 over 24. Now I just subtract right across the top, just like I have been. It's 20 minus 6. Can't take 6 away from 0. So that becomes a 1. I have to borrow. 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus nothing is 1. So our new numerator is going to be 14. That denominator moves right over to our answer of 24. Again, last thing I need to do is check, can it be simplified? Well, I ask myself what goes into 14, so that's 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. Looking through those, I know we don't use 1. 14 does not go into 24. 2 does, and 7 does not. So that means I'm going to divide both of these by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. So my final answer, just like last time, was 7/12. Now go ahead and pause the video and try out these next problems on your own, and then play the notes back and see how you did.